Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I am Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and today we are doing my final mock draft of the 2025 offseason. Draft week is here, and we are all super excited. And so we're going to do my final mock draft. We're going to have another video coming out today of Ryan's final mock draft. So be sure to check that video out as well. One final note, though, before we go into this, we are going to be going live on draft night at 7:45 p.m. Eastern time. So be sure to tune in. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think your team should do on draft night, and hit that like and subscribe button and tackle the bell to get notified when we do go live. And Ryan, let's pull up PFF here.
Let's get
So
started.
I'll be going through this now, and not really too much of a shocker here, I believe, for my first overall pick with Tennessee. It's Cam Ward's going to be their guy. It's all signs are pointing that way. I would be shocked, honestly, if at this point if they went in a different direction. But they canceled their workouts with the other top prospects. They just knew that this was going to be the route that they were going to go. I believe that means that they know the route that they're going to go. So we're going to go with
Yeah.
Cam Ward here at number one. Not too much of a shock. I don't think too much of a shock here either. Then just go with the next best, most athletic player here for Cleveland. It's going to be Travis Hunter. So I don't think there's going to be too much of a surprise here. These first two picks overall, I believe. I feel like it's also pretty unanimous from what I've been seeing that these are going to be the Monday morning quarterback kind of mock drafts here. These are going to be the first two picks. Now, I am very curious on what the New York Giants do here at number three. They do have Russell Wilson. They also have Jameis Winston as well. It's Jameis Winston. I would love for Jameis Winston to have a career resurgence. I think we all do. But I do believe that they will address quarterback here in this draft. There's been a couple of guys that have risen up the draft boards, like Jackson Dart, Tyler Shoke. Is that how you pronounce it?
Shuck.
Shuck.
Like a
Uh,
cob of corn.
exactly, yeah. And then there's still some other guys who, like Jalen Milroe, like the Riley Leonard, like Will Howard, which, like, hey, you never know. And I might even
Yeah.
still be forgetting some guys. And obviously, I didn't mention Shador Sanders because we all know he's going to be going. Like, he potentially could be going here, but I don't think they're going to go here because I think there's better value on the board here. There's also a very potential trade back spot. I feel like I really thought hard about maybe would Carolina want to move up and get Abdul Carter? Would somebody else want to come up and get Abdul Carter? I also think it's maybe a sneaky spot if, like, hey, we lost Saquon Barkley. Let's go get another generational running back here in Ashton Jeanty. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised. I am going to end up going with Abdul Carter here. I know they have Brian Burns. I know they have Kayvon Thibodeau, but Thibodeau was hurt a little bit of last year. He's also coming into the last year of his fifth year of his rookie contract before the fifth year option. So I think there still needs to be a determination on if they're going to take that or not. Brian Burns also, though, I think that he signed him to a 3-year deal as well. So once they traded for
Mhm.
him, so that's coming up on his second year also. I just think you look at him on film. I think that that's going to be a guy that's going to be tough for them to pass up on if they don't like Shador Sanders or some of these other guys. Maybe they go Mason Graham here. I think that actually could be a very legit spot also too. But if you're just looking at it for overall value, maybe they go Abdul Carter. But Mason Graham, I think, is also legit here. I think another thing though too for me with my mock draft as well as with Abdul Carter here, I think somebody would trade up to go and get Abdul Carter. So I just feel Abdul Carter
Yeah.
is going to be the third overall pick. And who knows, maybe your Patriots will trade up one spot to go get the guy just to make sure. And so I'm just thinking out loud. So
Yeah.
let me get to your Patriots here, and then I'll throw it over to you to get your overall feedback. But a lot of different routes I think the Patriots can go. I don't really think there's a wrong pick, in my opinion, of some of the top guys here. Like if they want to get Tet, I would get it. If they want to go Mason Graham, I'd get it. If they want to go Ashton Jeanty, I would really get that, especially with just the way the running back room has kind of fallen for you guys here. Mondre Stevenson's good, not great. And I think Ashton Jeanty could be great. But I ended up going the route that definitely seems the most Patriots way, and that's still going to go and get Will Campbell. You guys do still need a left tackle. He played left tackle at LSU. Now, will he be a left tackle in the NFL? I don't know. But he seems as close to a sure thing as possible for at least being a really good interior offensive lineman, worst case scenario. So I think he's worth the risk. I also think, too, he's a Mike Vrabel guy. He seems like a Patriots guy. And that's why I think that Will Campbell is going to be the guy.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. You just look at Will Campbell's personality and everything, and his leadership skills, especially at 21 years of age. I feel like that is going to resonate really well with Mike Vrabel. But I also think too, like this is a pick I don't think the Patriots need to overthink. I feel like if you take a tackle here that really frees you up in the rest of the draft, I think he is easily one of the best players on the board here. You could make a case for a lot of people here, but what the Patriots get with this pick is they get better. And that's the biggest thing that I think that they need to do is just get better.
Yeah,
And I like the fit. I think he can probably play left tackle with his athleticism. He has some he's is a little bit of an early hip opener, and he can lose on the outside edge because of that. But I think some of that is he's compensating for his lack of length. So he tries to turn and time edge rushers up. But I think with some coaching at the NFL level, that can be worked out of his game, and he's going to be a really solid tackle at the NFL level. I don't know if he'll ever be a Trent Williams, but again, very few people are. I'm gonna skip over the Giants because I think that's the most interesting pick potentially in this draft. But Travis Hunter, Cam Ward, I think both of those are chalk.
yeah,
Like those are kind of already they're written slightly in pen at this point. But Abdul Carter to the Giants, I think is very interesting because they had a lot of reports that they worked out Shadur Sanders this past week, and that overshadowed the other reports that they also worked out Tyler Shuck, Jackson Dart, and like one or two other quarterbacks at that week as well. And so they're definitely going to be in the quarterback market. I just don't know if it's going to be Shadur at the top. And I think Abdul Carter is a very big possibility. Kayvon Thibodeau is going into a contract year and hasn't performed as well as they had hoped. So maybe they rotate him, get a second or a third round pick for him, and then come back on day two with an extra pick there after selecting Abdul at 3.
yeah, yeah, and that's where the Giants can be. There's definitely very interesting points in this draft, like these butterfly effect type points. You know, like how it's going to affect the other teams moving forward. And the Giants is one of those spots. I'll get to another spot here, coming up in a couple of picks or so. But here now with Jacksonville on the board, if this board falls out this way, I find it really hard, Mason Graham not getting past this point here. It just if you just look at the team needs, you go look at what they've addressed this offseason. I think Mason Graham is, and they haven't addressed too much of the defensive line in general. But I think Mason Graham is going to be one of the key spots here for them, and would be a great compliment to Trayvon Walker and also Josh Allen there. And moving on now to the Raiders here. Once again, several different routes they can go, but I I really just like Ashton Jeanty, I think, in this offense. Like their running back room is so bad. And I know this is a deep running back class, but it's you have the control to get the best running back in this class. You have invested a lot in Geno Smith. You've obviously you have Brock Bowers. You have Jacoby Myers, who's I mean not the best receiver in the league, but a guy that Geno Smith can really rely on. And there's going to be other receivers in this draft that you can go and get that are going to be similar to Ted McMillan as well. With your next pick, Jaden Higgins potentially could be there. You know, you're going to have a Jack Bash. You're going to have guys like Jalen Royals potentially near your third round pick. And so I think a lot of different ways that they could end up going here. And to me, I just think Ashton Jeanty is going to be the one. It's best player available at this point. Similar then too with the Jets. I kind of look at the team needs, and I kind of actually like the way they've been building up this offensive line over the past couple of years. Saul Olufushanu, stepped in. He's going to be their left tackle. So let's go address the right tackle position as of right now on their depth chart. Warren Carter, who they drafted in the fourth round of 2023, is the guy that's sliding in. Let's bring in some competition. I think a guy like Armand Membu could be a guy that can come and slide in that right tackle spot. Worst case scenario, too, I think Membu could be a guy that you can move around the interior of the offensive line. And I think really keep bolstering up that team. Maybe Justin Fields is the guy, maybe not, but he's definitely a stopgap kind of guy with like low risk, high reward. So here at number 8, the Panthers were one of the teams I thought about potentially trading up with the Giants, but I do think they lack the draft capital to move up. They do have a second round pick, but it's the Rams second round pick, which I believe is
Yeah.
57th.
Yeah,
And
it is 57.
so the point differential, and maybe they give up a first next year to go get Abdul Carter. I think that would be very interesting. And so defensive line is definitely something that they need to address. Front seven is definitely something that they need. to address, and this is going to be a great draft class to do that. However, they, as of right now, they only have 8 guys signed on contract in the secondary. That includes free safety, strong safety, everything. And so if you're trying to find a guy who you can move around a lot, I think a guy that could be very versatile for your overall defense, and especially in the secondary, I think Jahdae Barron is that guy. He's played nickel, he's played outside, he's played safety. And so I think if you're trying to just get more depth, get more talent, increase the overall floor and raise the ceiling in that secondary room, I think he's going to be the guy that can come in and do that. And it's nothing against going against some of these other edge rushers, like a James Pierce, Mike Green, or Don Mesoraku, but there's so many of those guys. And I think too, if you're trying to find the best value in the moment as of right now, the secondary class definitely is a little bit weaker overall than this defensive line class. And so try and get some of the top guys as of right now. And if you don't like Jahdae Barron, then go get Will Johnson. I just think Jahdae Barron provides that versatility the Panthers will be looking for when it comes to adding in depth into that secondary.
Yeah, no, I like that. He's a very versatile piece. I think the rest of this has been uh, pretty much, I don't say chalk, but it's looked very similar to the start of my mock draft that we're releasing at the same
Perfect.
time as this one. So
Perfect.
I don't really have too much to say because it's been pretty much the exact same so far.
Exactly. All right. Well, then let's just keep on chugging along then. So at pick number 9, this is, I think, the first time I've had this player go here, and I think this is what potentially will happen if he's still available. But I actually have Shador Sanders coming off the board here. Uh, Reports are Derek Carr might not even be able to play in 2025. I also think then too as well, if you're Kellen Moore, he's got no allegiance to Derek Carr. Uh, and I also think too that you bring him in, there's going to be a competition, I think, between Spencer Rattler and Shador Sanders. Now, if you draft Shador Sanders here, you're intending on him on being the guy, but maybe he still needs some development. And you let's roll with Spencer Rattler. Let's see what we got with him. Then maybe you can trade him and get some other additional draft capital later on as you're still developing Shador. But I do think the Saints will address the quarterback position here. Maybe they don't address it here. Maybe they go Ted McMillan. Maybe they go defensive line. And it's something that's been, I think, a very common theme in my typical mock drafts. But with the news coming out with Derek Carr, and I think everything coming on with where Shador is going to be drafted here, there is still a difference between Shador Sanders and then the rest of the quarterback class, so to say. I know there's some guys that
Yeah.
maybe have some better intangibles, but I think Kellen Moore can work with him. I think they need to have a quarterback that they need to build around. So I believe that they might take the approach of let's just get some more bodies in there. Let's create a competition which will rise the level of these players, and the best man is going to win, and then we have our guy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really intriguing possibility. The one thing that I will say is if you look at the type of quarterbacks that Kellen Moore has had success with, you go look Dak Prescott in Dallas. And then now Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. They're the bigger, more mobile guys that are more of a true like dual threat. And they have big. Jalen Hurts doesn't have a big arm, but he has a bigger arm than Shador Sanders does. So I wonder a little bit about fit. But if the Saints are going to come into this draft and be like, we have to take a quarterback at 9, I think Shador is the best quarterback that's going to be on the board there. So
Well, true, but I think nothing too of those Kellen Moore offense is he is very creative with his scheming, where a lot of
I
times
agree.
it
Yeah.
needs a lot of accuracy. And if there's one thing I think we all agree on with Shador Sanders is he is a very accurate quarterback. So if he's
Yeah.
able to get into the scheming right, I know arm strength has been his negative, but I think this could be something that could work in a Kellen Moore system. And so we'll have to kind of wait and see.
Yeah.
The Saints could go in so many different directions. They're one of those butterfly effect picks here. And so moving on though now to the Bears, I think a lot of different directions they could go here. I think the ideal spot is going to be Ashton Jeanty if he does fall. Wouldn't be surprised if the Bears are aggressive and trade up. They're another one I thought too of maybe trading the Giants with him because they'd have the point capital because they have 2 second-round picks. So I think they could be extra aggressive. Ben Johnson would love to have that guy there with them. But this is a deep running back class, and the Bears have made a lot of great moves overall. I think one area, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, but I do agree that defensive line is something that they need to address, but they've addressed that a bunch. But I look at defensive line also too, kind of in general front seven. And when I look at Jahad Campbell, I think he can be a guy. Yes, he is a linebacker, but he's got a high uh, edge rush blitz capabilities. And I think you put him in that system. Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, they are getting a little bit older. I know they've brought them in over the past couple of years, but have him back there and develop and bring him in on these specialty plays and have Dennis Allen kind of groom him into the system. I think Jahad Campbell could be really deadly, and I think this also could really help out this defensive line as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fit. I think in this, if this were the pick, he would definitely be transitioned to like a more full time edge rusher because I feel like that
Definitely.
linebacker room is uh pretty solid at the moment. But he definitely gives it good depth, and he can move around and do some really creative things
Yeah.
with him, like from an edge rusher position.
Yeah. This is another one too, like with the Bears, like they've addressed so much. And honestly, I really like their roster as a whole, but they could go in so many different directions. Like I could see
Yeah,
Malachi Starks. I could I don't know about Ted McMillan, but like I could see Walter Nolan. You can make an argument for Tyler Warren, and then like maybe they'll slowly transition off of Cole Kmet, even though Mike
yeah,
Green or Will Johnson. Like there's so many different directions that they could end up going here. And very similar to, I think, with the San Francisco 49ers as well. I think one of the things that they will probably end up going is going to be the defensive line, because when we go back and look at when they were most dominant, when Nick Bosa was most dominant, was when he had good support beside him. And I think I just still really like Kenneth Grant and his size and his motor and what he was able to do alongside Mason Graham. So I think if you go and get Kenneth Grant into this system here, and I think it will take a lot of pressure off this young secondary that they have, as they lost some guys in the secondary as well. Then you're still going to have Fred Warner in the linebacking room also. I really think that this could be something that could kind of take this defense back to where we're used to seeing the San Francisco 49ers defense. I also think, too, then with Robert Sala as well and his defensive mind, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch what this 49ers defense is going to turn into. And so, real quick, then here as well with the Cowboys, similar thing as well. Cowboys going so many different directions. But I will say, with Ted McMillan falling all the way down here, I think you take Ted McMillan and then you are just going to have so much fun with this receiving room now. Because CeeDee Lamb can already do it all, but then you have a guy like Ted McMillan who I think can create a lot more opportunities here of stretching the field out. And so I believe that Ted McMillan will be a great fit, I think, for this Cowboys offense.
yeah. I mean, these last two picks, I like Kenneth Grant stuff the middle there. That's a good division. They're going to want to run the football a lot. They're playing Seattle, the Rams, and Arizona was one of the best running offenses in the league last year. So that's going to be really important. And then I like the Tet pick. That's good value there. I think he should be a top 10 pick. But I do see a lot of scenarios where he falls out of the top 10. And so I think that's good value. It's a good pairing with CD Lamb, and you give Dak just another weapon to
Yeah.
dominate.
No,
So
I noticed this with my mock draft here as I did, like just a lot of guys. Just it's amazing. Just you come to the end of the draft and you're like, oh, this guy's still available. This guy's still
yeah,
available, and and so, but it's just the value sometimes could be too good to pass up. So here with Miami, with the retiring of Teron Armstead, to me, I think it makes this pick, well, the positional pick, pretty simple, because there's a lot of tackles here that are going to be there. Like, and so I ended up going with Kelvin Banks, but I could see them going with what's his name, Josh Simmons also, if they feel like he's ready to go. But Kelvin Banks, though, I think can come in here, address that position. They can maybe go Malachi Starks as well. They can maybe go Walter Nolan. And I think he'd be interesting then too as well, like with the with Calais Campbell moving on. Also, a lot of different routes they can end up going here, but and this is where it's going to be interesting come draft night. Is I can see Kelvin Banks going here, but I can also see Kelvin Banks fall into the late 20s as well. Nothing against him, but it's more just teams might value a different position or a different player just a little bit more and seeing him fall. So here for the Colts, the dream scenarios right now, Tyler Warren falling to them. I think they're going to go tight end here, and I think this would be a good fit for this offense as a whole. Now, there's still just need to see how Anthony Richardson keeps on developing overall, but I think a guy like Tyler Warren and you see some of that improvisation might actually be a good complement to Anthony Richardson and his overall athletic capabilities. So we'll need to see what the Colts end up doing, but definitely going to be tight end focused for this team here. The Atlanta Falcons, everybody wants them to go edge rusher. Everybody wants them to go defensive side of the ball here, and absolutely so. I think that would make sense. I will say, just as a warning to Falcons fans, just knowing the front office past draft history, is they have gone offensive skill position player with every pick over the past 4 years. That Terry Fontenot has been the GM. So, and they've addressed a lot of draft picks over these past couple of years, and they've even brought on several free agents who are stopgap guys. Leonard Floyd, Devon Diablo, absolutely are stopgap guys, but still addressing that and all the draft picks. I would not be surprised if they went receiver here and they went Emeka Egbuka. I'm not doing that. I think there's another player that would kind of fit the overall need here, which is the route that they're going. I'm more saying that kind of as a warning, just because Darnell Mooney is not the long term goal. Also, like you have Drake London, who I think is going to have a stellar fantasy year this year. Bijan Robinson, I think, is a stud running back as well. I think Michael Penix could be a good future pick as well. This is also very likely trade back spot. But I ended up actually going with Jalen Walker. I really like just his overall athleticism. And I think too, if kind of going based off what I'm saying, if we're just trying to find a guy that can potentially develop and be the edge rusher that we're looking for, I think a guy like Jalen Walker with that versatility that he has, and he could technically also play a little bit in linebacker room as well. I do believe they're going to transition him to like more pure edge rusher with maybe some drop back in his own coverages and some fun, fancy defensive schemes. But a guy like Jalen Walker, though, I really like how explosive he is. I think he's just a young, athletic guy with a good motor. Keep him in state. But I think Jalen Walker would be the route that they could end up going here because he does provide a little bit more versatility, especially in the linebacking room. And I think if they want to maybe transition him into some zone coverage, learning under Caden Ellis, I think would be a good role model for him. So there's been a couple picks. Want to throw it over to you. What have been your thoughts so far?
Yeah, Kelvin Banks to the Dolphins makes a lot of sense. I mean, they need offensive line help really bad, and he can play guard, he can play tackle. They did invest a second round pick in Patrick Paul last year, and so he's the left tackle from Houston. He'll be going into his second year, so that'll be interesting to see there. But I think Kelvin Banks could definitely kick into guard. He has the power
Yeah.
to do it, and the anchor that you want there as well. So I think he could definitely do it. Tyler Warren to the Colts. You said it when you made the pick. That's a dream scenario for them. He's a really good just athlete overall. He is a little bit of an older player with a late breakout. But with that being said, he had a lot of scheme touches, and I think you throw his athleticism in the mix with Anthony Richardson. Then you have Jonathan Taylor. Then you have Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, A.D. Mitchell, Alec Pierce. Like that is an elite skill position player group. Not just in I think ceiling, but also just overall depth. And I I like that would be a really fun offense, I think, for Shane Steichen to go and scheme things up in. And if they can get the culture right in Indianapolis, that should be a high flying offense for them. And I like the pick there for the Falcons. I think Jalen Walker in that system would be playing a lot more on the edge.
Yeah.
I think he could also potentially be a top 10 pick. And so I think that's good value there for the Falcons if he falls down here.
I just think I also look at it too then, and it's like if you're looking at edge rushers specifically, like you go look at Mike Green, Donovan Ezaraku, James Pierce Jr., Mike Hill Williams, Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart, and I'm sure I might even be missing a couple of guys, but it's we my thing for Falcons, it's like we've been here before, like draft edge rusher. Like, okay, we'll draft Vic Beasley. Okay, he has one great year, but then he's a bust. Okay, well,
Yeah.
like we need to add on to this. Let's get Tack McKinley. Like, okay, I don't even think he had a great year. And then
No.
now I'm blanking then even too on some of the other like first round edge rushers, or other like premier, like, hey, here's the next guy edge rushers that just haven't panned out. I think that the last guy was John Abraham. So it's just why just keep going down the same road here. So this is what I think they will end up doing is going like Jalen Walker here now because even to like or Jalen Walker esque kind of guy or an edge rusher that they like. To me, preferably, we've spent a lot of guys on here. We don't really know what we have in Braylon Trice, for example, who we got in the third round last year, and he's coming off a torn ACL. Zach Harrison, they got in the third round, I believe, the year before that, or maybe 2022. But just see how these guys come and develop. I just feel like sometimes also too it could just be like a waste of a pick. But that being said, though, we actually have outside of Kyle Pitts have hit on some good offensive guys here, and I think a guy like Emeka Egbuka will be a great complement to this offense
Yeah.
that we have here. So I I'm indifferent each one on which route we would end up going. Let's just not draft a running back. Please don't draft a running back or a tight end here. But
What if Ashton Jeanty falls here?
I would be pissed. I would be legit. I would be very upset. But that would be funny though. That being said, if Ashton Jeanty does fall to 15, Broncos are calling the trade up. The Chargers are calling
Oh,
the trade up. The
for
Steelers
sure.
might be calling the trade up, like because they want to go get that guy in their
Oh, yeah.
system. So, but let's list off about 4 more here before I pass it off to you. But Arizona Cardinals typically have gotten Kenneth Grant because he's still available here. But I think Kenneth Grant's going to be rising up just with his overall defensive line capabilities. But he still could be there. I would really like him in this Arizona Cardinal system. That being said, the Cardinals did get Calais Campbell as well. I do still think just something front 7 is going to be a route that they end up going here. Maybe they go Gray Zabel and get a guard, maybe. But I ended up going with Walter Nolan here, just I think a really versatile defensive lineman. I think he would fit that Jonathan Gannon system as a whole. But I think I'm really looking forward to what this Cardinals defense can do, what this Cardinals team can do next year. And so here now with the Cincinnati Bengals, they I still think to me they're going to go defensive line. I also think too they need to start preparing for life after Trey Hendrickson because it seems like he's going to be the odd man out, unless if the Cincinnati Bengals are just made of money and they could somehow finagle the cap space here. And but I ended up going with Shamar Stewart just because he has fallen here a little bit. I know he's fallen down a little bit on the PFF boards, but he does have the intangibles of being like a freak athlete. He would fit that typical mold of what the Bengals defensive ends has been, and even to now their new defensive coordinator when he was the DC at the Colts, he did a similar type 4-3 defense. So keep that same mold going. So he might be a guy that they would want to end up going after. But I do think it'd just be based off how they've addressed this offseason so far. I do think that defensive line is going to be the route they end up going. So Cincinnati Bengals here, not too much different for me. I still just look at that offensive line, and I still think you
The
just need to keep
Seahawks,
on
not the
improving that.
not the Bengals.
Yep, sorry,
You
my bad. The Seahawks. The Seahawks now picking at 18. You still just need to keep on improving that offensive line, and I think Gray Zabel, I think, is just going to be the best interior offensive lineman here that they're going to go after. Maybe they go Tyler Booker. I could see them going Tyler Booker potentially, or maybe waiting on guard. But I think you go get Gray Zabel here, and he's a day one starter. So with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a lot of different rounds they can end up going here. Absolutely could go edge rusher, and I can see that here. I mean, with guys like Mike Green and Donovan Ezraku still on the board, that would fit that 3-4 defense that they would like. If Jahad Campbell or Jalen Walker are still on the board, I can see them going that route as well as like similar. And I think they'd even have that more versatility. I think Jahad Campbell would be the primo pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here if he's still on the board. But I ended up actually going with the secondary. I think Will Johnson falling just a couple of picks to them, as I think is going to be really good value for that secondary as a whole. There's going to be a lot of guys that the Buccaneers can go and get in the second and third round to help address that front 7. And I especially could a lot of good defensive tackles, I think, to put next to Vita Vea, or even some good linebackers as well. So, and I'm going with Will Johnson here, just trying to get some good value because they are going to need to address the cornerback room at some point. So
Yeah.
why not do it now and then really focus on the defensive line later on? So here at pick number 20, just a guy I mentioned earlier who I think the Falcons should probably draft. And I think it's because of the same reason to why the Broncos are going to draft him here in Emeka Egbuka. I think he's just going to be a very reliable guy that Bo Nix can lean on. I think Sean Payton's going to love having him in this offense. They could absolutely go running back here. Actually, initially when I was doing this mock draft, I actually had them going running back, but ended up switching it up because I just look at it. I think he's just going to be a very reliable guy for Bo Nix. He's a very reliable guy at Ohio State. Even to of all the great receivers that have come through during Emeka Egbuka's career, he still though was like a very reliable guy that these guys can lean on. They were the number one playmakers, and Emeka Egbuka was the guy that a lot of the in critical situations he got a lot of targets thrown his way.
Yeah, he has the most receptions in Ohio State history. So I know
Yeah,
he's a 5th year, so that's a little cheating a little bit. But yeah, very good possession receiver, big golf guy as well. Likes to play golf, so like that about him. But yeah, I think the last few picks, I think did we stop with the Falcons last?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so like the Jalen Walker pick, Walter Nolan, I think makes a lot of sense. He's a stout interior defender that has a lot of play strength. Want to see him be a little bit more penetrating in true pass rushing sets. But with that being said, he is an interior defensive lineman, and so I think his ability to be stout and athletic and chase the ball carrier, I think is really important. So I like him.
Well,
He
I will
he
say to
has a
that
very
point.
wide range.
I will say to that point real quick. Calais Campbell now being on the team, he's going to learn a bunch
Yeah,
about those things you just said specifically, how to get after the quarterback more, have much better pass pressure presence.
yeah,
And even too, if they're on the field at the same time, with how athletic he is, though, too, Calais Campbell just naturally is going to need two guys guarding him, just with how big he is. So
yeah.
I think Walter Nolan coming in is going to help out. He's going to learn a lot this rookie year, and I think he could have a great career in Arizona.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good fit and a good mentor for Walter Nolan there. Shamar Stewart, I've been really high on him. His just athletic traits are astounding. So I think you throw him across from Trey Hendrickson. I think that's a good match. And this is probably Trey Hendrickson's final year as a Bengal if he's not even traded before the season starts. Or maybe
Potentially.
even during the draft. So Gray Zabel, I like that fit. They need interior offensive linemen. Will Johnson at 19 is great value. He should be a top 10 pick, but for whatever reason, maybe the media, the NFL is scared of his injury. But go look at his 2023 tape, and he was a shutdown corner. And Emeka Egbuka, I love. He's just a fantastic possession receiver that has some big play upside. They need that in Denver, that kind of consistent playmaker over the middle. I think he could have a Jackson Smith and Jigba-esque impact in his rookie season. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's I think it'll take a couple of games for him to get his feet wet, but I think you have Cortland Sutton on the outside, you have Emeka Egbuka in the slot, Marvin Mims and his speed on the other side. And then I know the Broncos are probably going to get a running back here. So then imagine they go get like Travion Henderson in the second round or like Quinshon Judkins as well. Like I just really like the way that room is shaping up.
oh yeah.
And then maybe even too with their third or fourth round pick, they go get a Gunnar Helm or Mason Taylor or something like that, and really just start to improve the skill position player room here as well. And then Bo Nix will be a Hall of Famer in about 15 years. So who would have thought that? So speaking of drafting skill position players here, Pittsburgh Steelers at 21. So a neat little trend we realized was how the Pittsburgh Steelers utilize running backs. They don't pay running backs at all. They re-signed Jalen Warren, I think, to like a pretty cheap little deal, but just because he's cheap and like they need that kind of value here. But you go back and it's like they'll pick up the fifth year on some of these first round running backs. But then after that, they don't pay them like the big money that like Najee Harris got $10 billion from the Chargers. Like they would never,
Yeah.
they've never paid. They didn't pay him. They didn't pay Le'Veon Bell. They didn't pay James Conner, and then even a couple of guys before that. So I say all that. This means they're going to draft a running back here, especially with this amazing running back class going on. Maybe they wait a little bit. Maybe they go skill position player and like Luther Burden and really have like an amazing three-headed receiver room with George Pickens, DK Metcalf, and like Luther Burden. I think that'd be very interesting. Then Pat Fryermuth still to throw too. But here I have Omari Hampton coming off the board. So
Mhm.
I would not be surprised actually if people trade up to go get Omari Hampton here as well. And I honestly thought about the Bears taking him at 10, if I'm being honest, just with what Ben Johnson and how he utilizes their running back. So I think Hampton, though, would come in and would be a phenomenal fit for the Steelers offense. Actually kind of has that Steelers mold, very, very physical, very hard nosed. I think he would fit that offense well. And I'm also, too, this is under the, we are recording this Sunday night. I still think Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think he's going to go to Minnesota. I don't think he's going to retire. I think he's still got some juice in those legs. And I think he wants one more run at it. I think he's just taking his time. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a contract in place. There's rumors that there's personal things going on in his life with people close to him as well. So maybe that's why he's taking his time. But it's something he's done in the past year. I think he's going to come back and sign with the Steelers. So that's going into this assumption here. If not, then this is going to be very interesting on how the Steelers go with their quarterback pick. Maybe they trade for Kirk Cousins. maybe they trade up to try and go get Shador and just have to roll with it, or maybe they take Jalen Milroe here and just say screw it, like we'll draft Arch Manning next year at number 1 overall. But I do think the Steelers get Aaron Rodgers. I think they go Amari Hampton here at 21.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a good fit. We've talked about it before. I love Amari Hampton and what he brings to the table. So I think that kind of going forward with him for the next 5 years, I think is going to be a really good thing for this franchise. And then they'll just rinse and repeat, I guess, with
Exactly.
him.
Exactly. So, let's wrap this up here as we're getting close. We got about 10 more picks left, but Chargers here, I think they've made a lot of moves this offseason, but I think one thing they can improve on is still going to be that tight end spot. And I have Colson Loveland coming off the board here for the Los Angeles Chargers. Jim Harbaugh getting his former Michigan boy. Green Bay Packers, the more and more I think about it, they could go secondary, but there's not too many guys here in the secondary that I would want to take. And the one guy they could take, Malachi Starks, they've addressed that spot, and I don't think that they would end up doing that. So I think they would wait till their second round to address the secondary and go defensive line here, particularly in the edge rusher spot. So pick who you'd want if you'd want it to be Nick Gordon, if you'd want it to be Michael Williams. I ended up going with James Pierce Jr. I think he's going to be kind of that good balance overall. I don't believe Donovan Ezraku or Mike Green are the type of edge rushers that the Packers have historically drafted. Maybe they go that route, but they're definitely more outside linebackers in my opinion. Maybe Mike Green is a little bit bigger than he was initially brought out to be going into the offseason, but I still think someone like James Pierce Jr. might be the route they end up going here. So here now at 24, the Minnesota Vikings. My one trade I have coming up. I do believe Cleveland is going to trade up into the first round here. I do believe there's going to be a bidding war for this guy here, but I do have Jackson Dart coming off the board here. As much as it's weird to say, I ended up doing the 67th and the 24th, and then maybe even like a future pick as well, just to make it kind of easy. It's not really more about the draft trade because they'll figure that stuff out. I
Yeah.
think one of the things that too as well is if you just look at the points, I don't think that's as fairly accurate because this spot I think is going to be a bidding war. You go and look
With
at it.
with quarterbacks, I think it's you can kind of throw the points out the window
Yeah.
just because they get like people will go nuts for quarterbacks.
Yeah. Well, because I also think then too, you're going to have Cleveland that's going to want to trade up. You're going to have the Giants that are going to want to trade up. There's going to be other teams also too that are just going to generally want to trade up for this spot here because I know this is going to be kind of a pivotal spot where you could trade back and maybe get a guy that you really like. So I think that's going to drive the price up a little bit. So I do have Jackson Dart coming off the board here. I don't think Browns fans really like this. I don't really like it, but I also think too they can't go into 2025 with Kenny Pickett and then Joe Flacco as a quarterback without any thought of the future,
Yeah.
post Deshaun Watson. And so I think he's the next guy. There's other guys that have value like Tyler Shuck or Jalen Milroe or shoot, even some of the other guys. I mean, like who knows with Dylan Gabriel or Riley Leonard or Will Howard, as I've stated, like who knows? Probably not, but who knows? you know.
It's interesting to see this quarterback class, especially the juxtaposition from 2024 to 2025,
Yeah.
where it was like you had 6 guys go in the top 12, and then you didn't have another quarterback go until the 5th round in Spencer Rattler. And then it's like, all right, well, there's one guy that's going to go first overall for sure. Who else? Like there are a lot of talks that Shador might even make his way into the 2nd round,
Yeah.
which is crazy. And so it'll be really interesting to see like where all these quarterbacks land and what's
Yeah.
the landing spot for them.
Well, especially too. I mean, there was if you go look back and look at last year's class, they were probably well of the first 3 guys. There were the most questions around Jaden Daniels because we all saw what he could do on film, but it was kind of just
Yeah.
1 year. Then like how consistent could he be? And then obviously all those questions were like wiped out the window. Like obviously he had an amazing season. He's a future superstar of the league. But I say that specifically because like there weren't too many questions around Caleb Williams. Like maybe whatever questions there were, I think it was just because of like draft fatigue and people fishing. Same thing then too with Drake May as well. There were some legitimate questions around Penix, JJ McCarthy, and Bo Nix, but JJ McCarthy still kind of That verdict's obviously clearly still out. Penix still hasn't really played enough games, but you can see there's some potential there.
Yeah.
But you didn't really start getting into those questions until like quarterbacks 4, 5, and 6. Even at Cam Ward, quarterback 1, who is going first overall, there are some questions. Like I
Yeah.
can see this guy not panning out. No fault of his own. He's going to be taken first overall because the team needs a quarterback, and he's probably taken 15 to 20 spots earlier than he should if we're going by like best player available player rankings. And so, and then Shador, there's a bunch of questions. Jackson Dart, he's not even going to start probably his first year,
No,
but
he's a full red shirt.
yeah. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with its quarterback class. Would not be surprised if we're not speaking about any of these guys 3 or 4 years from now. And so it's going to be very interesting. But get back to it. Houston Texans offensive line is obviously a very big need as well for this team here. That being said, they've addressed draft picks at the tackle spots here, and I think they can go get really good interior offensive linemen in the second, third rounds. So here, I'm actually going to go receiver spot. I know they traded for Christian Kirk, but he's on the last year of his deal. Who knows what Tank Dell is going to be whenever he comes back? He's more than likely not playing at all in 2025. If he comes back, I mean, that's just an absolute miracle story, with the injury that he had. But just
Yeah.
timing that to happen, the severity of it, I'm curious how he's going to be in 2026. But I say that I think Luther Burden is a great complement to what CJ Stroud and Nico Collins are looking for. And I think he's going to help out a lot, especially too with a team with a lot of offensive line capabilities. Getting a guy like Luther Burden who you can just throw the ball to, like on these quick screen passes, I think is going to help out a lot of kind of spreading the defense out, maybe even helping the offensive line out a good bit. So here at 26, I feel like a lot of different rounds they could go. I would love to go cornerback here for the Rams, but not anybody that I'm just super in love with. That being said, the next pick isn't until pick 90. This is a very real trade back spot. But once again, couldn't really think of anything in my mind that would make sense to me. Like this team would love to go and get this player because I don't know if this team would want to trade draft capital for even if that player's not there. There's a couple players very similar to him that will probably be there. There's were a lot of those scenarios I was working through. So here I ended up actually going with Matthew Golden, receiver here. I think this is a really good value overall for him falling. They need some more pass catchers moving on. I know they brought in Devontae Adams, but that is definitely a rental, 1 to 2 year rental.
Yeah.
And he is also 33 as well. So if he's going to get banged up, I think Matthew Golden is going to be a great complement to Puka Nacua. I think he could be a guy that will work really well in Sean McVay's system. And really, too, you kind of look past like in their depth chart. I mean, they have Jordan Whittington, yes. Like there's some other guys that have really succeeded overall that have tried really hard and found success in this Sean McVay system. But I think a guy like Matthew Golden and his talent, I think, could really thrive. And once again, I think continue to help out in this kind of Sean McVay West Coast offense. So moving on now to Baltimore. This is where I think Mike Green falling all the way down here. I think just too good a value overall. Once, as I said earlier, like there were some guys that fell, and I think Mike Green's just going to be really good value overall. Similar, I think, here too with Josh Simmons. Taylor Decker's getting older as well. If Josh Simmons didn't have his pretty serious leg injury in the Oregon-Ohio State game, your Patriots would be taking him at 4 overall, no questions.
Oh yeah.
Like he'd be. You go look at his film before injury, and the dude is just manhandling these poor college defensive ends.
Yeah.
And so I think he is a Dan Campbell kind of guy. I think he would continue to kind of fit that MO of what they're looking for here. And I think he can come in if if Taylor Decker gets hurt. But I think also too, if he's still nursing that leg injury, still gives them a lot of time, I think, for him to come back fully healthy and then get ready for the NFL. So here at 29, they've moved on from a couple of key guys in their defensive end room. And so I actually have them going with Donovan Ezraku here as well. I just think he'd really fit well in this Dan Quinn system. A really good run stopper as well. They're going to need that being in the NFC East as they go up against the Giants and Tyrone Tracy. And so I'm just joking. Obviously, I know about Dallas Cowboys and Miles Sanders and that running back room now. So it's going to be lethal this year. But yeah, I do think Donovan Ezraku is going to be a great fit overall. And for everybody still typing, obviously I know about Saquon Barkley and the Eagles. I think that's the point of the joke. So thank you for still watching the video if you're still here at this point. Buffalo Bills now picking at 30. This is where the one cornerback I think maybe the Rams could go. I actually had them going here. I had them going with Trey Amos. So I really like his aggressiveness. I think he's going to fit well within that system, the Sean McDermott type system as well. But I think the Bills can go in any which direction, defensive side of the ball. It's I'm going to be very curious on what they end up doing. This is also a very serious trade back spot. Something the Bills I think really similar to your Patriots is like it's a Bills thing to do is to trade back out of the first round, get a lot more of these picks, and so. But wrap it up here now. Similar though, I think to the Bills, the Chiefs, I think could go a lot of different directions. More focused though on, I think the trenches. I think they've spent and done so much with the offensive line that maybe they'll wait. I also don't know if the. I mean, maybe you go Tyler Booker here. I can see them going Tyler Booker, but I actually have them going with Derek Harmon here. I think just a good player, good value. I think put him across from Chris Jones as well. Continue to beef up that defensive interior and hopefully help out some of these edge rushers and the secondary. I think Steve Spagnuolo would really like that, so they can continue to rush 4 and drop back 7. So then lastly here for the Philadelphia Eagles, there's a couple guys that were falling here, but the guy that really stuck out the most to me was Malachi Starks and have him fall all the way down here. It's nothing really against him at all, but once again, I felt like I could just make arguments, and I think teams would potentially wait for him to fall. But I think once again, though, too, I think the Eagles get an absolute steal because if there is one, I would say, well, I don't want to say weakness, but an area where they could improve is Reed Blankenship is their free safety. I think you come in and bring in Malachi Starks, and I think he can improve in this already phenomenal defense. It just provides some more depth, I think, in the secondary case. If there are injuries, Malachi Starks can move around. He could play nickel. He could maybe play strong safety. He's probably more best fit as a free safety. So I just think it's good value, but we'll have to see here. It feels like after every time, I'm sure there's going to be some people that agree with this, but after all these mock drafts I've done this offseason, after each one, I'm like, that's a horrible pick. Like, there's no way this guy falls. There's no way this guy falls. I feel like I keep saying that every time after this draft. But once again, though, too, we're questioning what the Giants are going to do at the 3rd overall pick.
Yeah.
It's not like last
Well,
year where we could kind of figure out the first 14, 15 picks pretty easily.
and it all snowballs pretty quickly because certain
Yeah.
teams have some really good fits that a lot of people see, and then other teams like the Giants, like the Patriots, like the Saints at 9, like there are a lot of fits that like kind of make sense, but sometimes you feel like you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and it
Yeah.
like I just this draft is going to be so entertaining for all of the opposite reasons of last year, where like outside of the first few picks, we have no idea where any of these guys are going to go. If you
Yeah.
told me that Will Campbell made it all the way down to 11 where the 49ers are picking, I would probably believe you. Hell, if you told me he made it all the way down to even like maybe the Bengals, like yeah, that would probably be a little bit outlandish, but if a lot of teams view him as a guard, then like that's where guards start to go. And so I think that's a really interesting aspect of this draft. And just to kind of weigh in on the last few picks, Omari Hampton makes a lot of sense. Colson Loveland makes a lot of sense. James Pierce Jr. I like that fit as well. Jackson Dart there at 24, I think makes a lot of sense. I love the Luther Burden fit with Nico Collins. Even if Tank Dell comes back, then you have a great trio of wide receivers there. Maybe Matthew Golden goes there instead, but he literally went the next pick. So if you don't like, if you wanted Matthew Golden, you can just swap them in your head. Like that's how that is. And I actually really like the Matthew Golden to the Rams because they just moved on from Cooper Kupp. He can be that Cooper Kupp-esque route runner. Obviously he's not right now, but could develop. So Mike Green, Josh Simmons, Ezaraku, that like they all make a lot of sense. And so I think that this is a good draft. And then like just off the top of my head, like Jaden Higgins made it to the second round. You have Josh Connerly, Ariante Ursery are both in the second round as well. Like there's a lot of really good talent there at the top of the second round that I think that teams can go and target. So all in all, I think this was a successful mock draft. This is the final one for you for this offseason. So curious to see how accurate you were
It's
able to make it.
last year our mocks were, I would say, decently accurate, just because it was much easier to pick, where the superstars were going. Like things just kind of fell in place. It really is. After Cam Ward, I'm like, there's no guarantee the Browns are going to take Travis Hunter. They probably will. If you're just going based
Yeah.
off like overall capabilities, I would love to see an Abdul Carter, Miles Garrett defensive line. I think that would be pretty wild. But it's going to be fun on draft night to sit there for 30 minutes in between all these picks while we see commercials and Roger Goodell talking. So, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Again, you mentioned this at the beginning of the video. We are going live at 7:45 on draft night, April 24th, for the first round of the NFL draft. Please go ahead and like and subscribe and smash the bell to get notified when we create new content or we go live for the draft. Other than that, we will see you guys next time.